Stand by for recording. You're listening to Pop, Corn, Forest. Part 1.
I don't know if it'd be considered a poem. It's more like a quote. I don't know. I like all of the quotes in here. Oh, yes. The most potent muse of all is our own inner child.
Lily, do you want to say what you had for breakfast today?
Oh, I had leftover homemade scones by my aunt's friend, and also fermented soybeans over rice and radish kimchi.
What is your name?
Lili Thorson.
Makes me think of what if we lived in a world where everyone had a music sound effect after their name.
Whoa.
Everyone would
should add like a reverb to Lili Thorson.
Okay, we can make a note of that and experiment with some reverb and some echo. Where are we at right now?
Oh.
Where we be at?
I'm feeling better. This morning was rough. I was super tired, but like being out and walking and talking and the breeze and the sun and the view of the ocean is really nice. And all these puppies.
When's the last time you were on a podcast?
This is the first time I've ever been on a podcast.
Are you like do podcasts or like any kind of like spoken word things occupy like a part of your kind of day-to-day life?
I think I have like a secret desire to speak on a podcast.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I do like to yap, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like because I live by myself, I'm kind of silent a lot, and now I'm learning like, oh, I actually like talking.
No way.
And hearing myself talk.
That's cool. I feel strange being direct, but I'm also asking you to say for the viewers like literally our location.
We're at the Berkeley Marina. I had leftover homemade scones by my aunt's friend, and also fermented soybeans over rice and radish kimchi.
Wow, that is not the typical breakfast response that one hears, especially with the homemade scones.
They're pretty good. They're like cornmeal, raisin. They're pretty darn good.
Cornmeal, raisin, and fermented soybeans.
Wait, so would I create a VR movie about myself but not use my physical characteristics?
Yeah.
No, I would use my physical. Like, I would, like, have her have black hair, and, like, I'd kind of make her eyes a little Asian. Like,
okay.
Yeah. But then that would also be an opportunity to perceive myself. I feel like it's so strange. Also, like, being mixed, like, half Japanese and half white, I always kind of struggled, like, just even comprehending what I look like. Like, I never, like, I lived in Japan for 10 years, and I never, like, people would instantly recognize that I am, like, not completely Japanese. Like, there's, like, a term, half, like, oh, you're like, a foreigner, kind of, or like you're mixed. People would like see my face, and so I always thought I looked super white. And now that I'm in America, I'm like, I used to live in Fresno too, and a lot of people would think I was Hispanic, because like everyone in Fresno is Mexican pretty much. So they look at, like, some people would associate that with me, or like they look at me and be like, oh, I thought you were Hispanic, or like someone said, oh, I thought you were white. I was like, what? But then other people are like, what, you look Asian? I'm like, I don't know how I look. Like, everyone tells me something different. And I'm like, I don't even know.
Like, let's say you went to Japan and, like, just no one ever made that comment. Like, would that...
I could tell by the way they looked at me. Like, just being in public or in a grocery store, like, their eyes would linger on me longer than a normal stranger eye contact thing. I'm like, oh, they're thinking something about me, and I'm like self-conscious. And like going through puberty at that age definitely didn't help with like the whole self-identity thing, and like people looking at me and be like, oh, your skin is so pale, I love that. Your eyes are so big, I love that.
So it would have to be it would have to be a deeper change than like, I mean, you can't like police people's eyes, and that wouldn't be the answer anyway. Yeah. But like, is there another world where like you can like go to Japan as like a person who's half white and half Japanese and just like be there without lingering eyes? I mean, I know in this world, no, but like,
I think reframing my story, like, and I have like so many tattoos too, which brands me as like not Japanese anymore. I think it affected me so much as a kid because I needed to fit in. I did want to stand out, but now like I've owned my kind of identity as I'm American. Like, I've committed to this life in the States. And so when I do go back to Japan to visit, which is something I'm like really emotionally preparing myself for, I would do it with like that idea that, oh, I'm a foreigner. I'm like not a foreigner, but like I'm American. I'm not Japanese. I'm half Japanese. That's my upbringing, but me,
the chronology
like
of your tattoos.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I lived in Japan for a while, like a total of 10 years. Moved back and forth a lot, but the biggest chunk was like middle school and high school years. So like towards the end of high school, like I would be on Pinterest, or like I'm still exposing myself to American culture through like Twitter and like the internet and stuff. So like tattoos were always on my radar. And then I'd be on Pinterest and I'd like find like these beautiful tattoos and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I want it so bad. Like, I just want art on my body. And you know, like it's super taboo in Japan. It might be gaining more acceptance, but it's still like pretty because it's associated with like the Yakuza like gang activities in Japan. So it's like super like disgusting, you know, or like just super taboo. So like I had some friends in high school and I'd be like, I really want one, and they'd be like, ew, that's so gross, like that's filthy. So I was just like, whatever. And then I moved out here, and as soon as
when was that?
2018. So I was in Fresno initially because my grandma lives there. So I moved in with her for a couple months, but then I immediately was like working 2-3 jobs and restaurants and stuff. And I got my own apartment and I was making my own money, and I was like, okay, it's time for a tattoo. So my first tattoo was 2018 to like celebrate. Yeah. And it was pretty small, so I could like gauge what the pain and what the process would be for a tattoo. But that was like celebrating the beginning of my actual real life, like me as an independent adult. 2018, that was the year I moved to the US by myself. And then from there I was like, okay, well, I can handle the pain, like I like how it looks, I'm ready for more.
I stopped that recording and re-recorded. I mean, not re-recorded. I began a new recording. How many tattoos do you have overall?
I have no idea. Like maybe 20.
Whoa! I would have thought like 8.
No. They add up. I forget about some. Or like they're not even on my radar really anymore. I feel like people notice my tattoos more than I do. Like they're just a part of my body now. But all my tattoos I got when I was like between the ages of like 19 through like 21, which is kind of a crazy age to get a bunch of permanent ink on your body. And also, after a certain point, I got into like a situationship with my tattoo artist. Like I went to different artists in Fresno. All my tattoos were done in Fresno. So like after a certain point, this tattoo artist guy, I was in a situationship with him for like over a year. So like a lot of the ink I received was from him, which is kind of also a stupid thing to do. Like, why are you getting this like permanent reminder of someone that like is just like giving you breadcrumbs? But anyways, I don't regret any of them. One of them I'm kind of like, I don't know if this aligns with me anymore, so maybe in the future if I like find a cool artist, I might like not cover up it entirely, but like kind of add a different layer to it. One of the tattoos that I really think is cool is my like thigh piece, I have like this like fairy goth moth situation, and it was done by an artist friend. I met them when they were like making art. From a friend. They were already making art, like painting and stuff, so I knew like they were like an artist. But then they got a tattoo gun to practice with, and then maybe like 7 months after they got their tattoo gun, they were like starting tattooing. They were just like starting small on their friends with like, they would design like small flash sheets that like they thought that people would like. And then I was like, hey, like you should like give me a tattoo, but like draw anything you want. And so like that was, they drew this goth moth thing. So that was cool. I like having, one of the reasons I haven't got any tattoos since like leaving Fresno is because like it was so nice receiving tattoos from people that I actually knew. So I already like have that, I don't know, that it like adds an extra layer of this like art that I'm putting onto my body, just like that connection and that relationship, and also the security of like walking into a tattoo appointment and you already like have this trust in this person.
Yeah.
So like just I haven't really had any desire to get any more tattoos, just because like the search is just like, I'm like, I don't even want to do that, like looking for an artist and like seeing if I like their artwork, and then also the money too. I'm just like, I have enough tattoos, I don't, all that effort, it's like I don't even want to do that.
You went hard for a couple of years.
Yeah.
20 tattoos and
yeah.
like,
and all my piercings too. I got like so many piercings during that age. I was just like in my body mod era.
Are you talking about like well, in Japan, that was my experience also, because I lived in a really rural town. Like if I lived in Tokyo, I feel like people would be a little less so, and probably not everyone was like looking at me consciously, like they probably weren't like judging me as they saw me, like they just noticed something different and their eyes lingered just a little longer, and like, you know, like you look at something, you don't even realize you're looking at it.
yeah.
But also because of like my personal situation, I was just super hyper self-conscious about that, especially as like a young girl going through puberty, and things weren't good at home, so I was just like super extra like why are they looking at me, what's wrong with me, like, you know. But now I probably wouldn't take it too seriously. I'm just like, oh, whatever, I look at people too.
Name of the town in Japan where you were?
Ooh, it's called Kakizaki, or if you can't really speak Japanese, you will say Kakizaki.
Kakizaki.
But it's honestly, being on the Berkeley Marina reminds me of the town because it was right on the ocean.
No way.
Yeah, it was a beach town, but super rural. So like in the summer we would get some tourists. I worked actually, we had like, so there was a bar, izakaya type situation in the small little town. And during the summer they would erect a wooden cabin building thing on the beach, on the sand, and sell like ramen and like draft beers, and that was like my first ever job, and I was like so freaking scared. Like customer service in Japan was terrifying.
Why?
Cause there's like so an extra level of like politeness and manners. I wonder how the audio experience is gonna be.
This way.
Perfect. But yeah, in the summer it was pleasant and it was nice, but the winter was awful because it was just so windy and we'd get like blizzards. Like the prefecture I lived in is called Niigata Prefecture, and it's known for being like super snowy and cold, but being that I lived right on the ocean, it would snow, but the snow would not be able to accumulate because it was just so freaking windy and the wind would just like blow it all away. So like we experienced the terrible cold, but no snow and just like awful wind, and our train, I would like take the train to my high school every day. It was like maybe like a 40-minute train ride, But like sometimes the train would just like stop, like be canceled because like the wind was just so bad. And it would happen pretty regularly in the wintertime. So like no one really wants to live there.
Do people talk about, I can't even remember the name of the
Kakizaki.
Do they talk about how bad it is there, like
Yeah.
when they're there? Is it?
Oh, watch out. Yeah. It's generally not like a place that, well, I don't think it's even on a lot of people's radars because it was just such a tiny little town. But it was nice. I lived like right on the ocean, so I could leave my house and be at the beach in like 2 minutes.
So, pretty good summers.
I never actually swam a lot though, like maybe as a kid, but the older I got, like there's just like no time, because when you're in Japan and you're in high school or like middle school, like you're kind of expected to be participating in some sort of after school activity.
Just culturally?
Yeah, and if you don't, you're like, you could opt out, but they're like, oh, like,
What is it? Well,
compost.
oh my god, that's... Well, there's a plastic cup in it, so
Yeah.
I'd hardly say so, with also lots of trash bags.
Yeah.
What else about... I mean, because you were there for 10 years?
Yeah, in that town, that's the town that my mom was born in. So that's where my Japanese side of the family was mainly located. But I spent 1 year living in Saitama Prefecture, which is a lot more populated. It's closer to Tokyo, kind of ish. And that was only 1 year, but it was pretty like significant in my character development, I feel like, because I was like second grade and I had a best friend, but it was kind of the time where I was realizing just like the economic reality of my family situation and like the kind of not so great reality of my family situation, because we lived in a tiny apartment and it was like super messy, and it was just the five of us usually we'd live with my grandparents a lot, so like my grandma would be the one feeding us or like taking care of us. But when it was just like the five of us, like my dad, my mom, me, and my two little sisters, things just like went to shit, kind of. Like we weren't fed, we weren't clothed, house would be messy, I could be out as late as I wanted and no one would care.
I'd like kind of emailed you
So like
a bunch of different things, but you had like responded with like wanting to, or like feeling open about talking about like mental health and
Yeah.
like your experiences growing up. Is that something that you're still down to talk about? And still,
I'm down as long as it doesn't feel like I'm like trauma dumping. Or,
no, I don't think so. I mean, you don't like have a trauma dumping like vibe, like
Okay.
just sitting across. It sounds like really very formative.
Yeah,
So
definitely formative, I would say. Definitely made me learn, or gave me a desire to just like be my own person, just outside of my family, because I kind of rejected them so early on because they rejected me first. Well, it was like a very neglectful environment, so I felt like they never cared about me. So I was always just like had the freedom to just like be outside super late as like a little kid, and like they didn't care. So like I don't know, that kind of gave me survival skills. Like
yeah.
like I know how to remember what street I'm on, and I know how to like remember my path so I'll never get lost, or like just things like awareness
Yeah.
of how the world works, I guess.
More, or to kind of like flesh that out a little bit, I literally wrote down like some of the stuff from your email that was like, you had said like understanding the effects of generational trauma. And then you had mentioned like in understanding that in the context of like the immediate household, and then had said like negatively impacts people's ability to develop healthy senses of identity, self-worth, and good emotional management skills as a child.
Definitely. Like now that I grew up in my own family situation, I see it everywhere. It's like no one's not impacted by it. Like even if you yourself grow up in a happy, healthy, loving, but structured home, like there's still always going to be someone in our current society who kind of didn't really have that. And there's varying degrees of it. Like someone could be like, oh, I was never abused, but also like maybe your mom didn't communicate with you, like she was passive aggressive, or like she never said what was on her mind. She would like give you the silent treatment, and you thought that was totally normal, and that's how you communicate now, and you don't see that as an issue. Or that's just an example. But it's like it affects just everyone. I feel
like go out and be out in the town, just like walking around.
I think
for hours and hours. And I think after like a year, I wasn't really. There was like a fight that we got into because we used to do this thing where like we'd steal people's like bicycle keys. Like in Japan, people would just like leave their bike lock key in their bike because it was just so safe. And my friend was like, let's take them. And I was like, okay. And then after like we had like a pouch and we filled it with just like bicycle keys. We were in 2nd grade. And then I was like looking at this and I was like, I don't feel good about this. Like, why are we doing this? And then we got into an argument, and I think I don't know what I did with that pouch, but I just felt like really bad at the end of it. That girl also stole my bike too. I like lost my bike, and I was like, I don't know where it is. And it was gone for like months, and then I was finally like, hey, we should go out and walk around and look for it. And then like we were just like out and about, and then she returned with the bike. And I was like, whoa, how'd you find it? How'd you even know to look for it? And she like gave some random excuse, and I didn't really put 2 and 2 together until I was older. I was like, wait, she totally stole my bike, and
it just appeared.
Yeah.
So you had a formative year in Saitama.
Yeah, Saitama. I also experienced like the full brunt of like kids' racial biases in Japan. Like I had in Japan, especially in elementary school, you're expected to walk to school with the people in your neighborhood, like similar age groups who go to the same school as you. So you like walk together to school. And I had like a group of girls that we all walked to school with. And then one day, the girls weren't walking with us. It was just one girl. And then she was like crying and like telling me like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't even want to do it. Like they made me do it. And I was like, oh, it's okay. Not really knowing what she was talking about. Because like I was still language barrier too. Like when I moved that year, I didn't really speak much of Japanese. So just like things were just like on a different cognitive level for me. But like I understood, like she was upset, she was crying, I didn't really know what was going on. I went to school and then the teachers like pulled me to the side and they're like, we're so sorry, what happened? Like, and I was like, oh, okay. Not really knowing what happened. But then by the end of the day, I kind of like had an inkling. So I went home and I was like, hey, like, did I get like a letter or something? And my mom was like, oh yeah, look. And like there were these sheets of origami paper filled to the brim with like, filthy foreigner, go back to your country, you should die. Just like, and it was written by those girls. And I didn't really understand, I don't know. I didn't know how to like process it. I think I just was like, oh, okay, that happened. And then I never really spoke to those people much after that, like the girls who did that. But I still wanted to be friends. Like I want to be included, and I felt like bad that like, I don't know. So like, I think some months after that happened, I ended up like going to one of the girls' apartments, and they were just like really mean. They were like, oh, you can't see the code to my apartment complex. Like you're the only one who can't see it. Like, and just like subtle, weird things that I was like, okay, well, I don't even want to hang out with you guys if you're gonna like be mean to me like this. So yeah.
I don't know if, I assume that's comfortable, but if you want, I wanted to offer that if you want a towel to sit on.
I
actually have a picnic blanket that I completely forgot about. I'm just out here. No thoughts in my brain. It's actually zodiac themed.
No thoughts in my brain. Zodiac themed.
Perfect.
So that sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it was a really intense year, and like while that was happening, my dad was just kind of like on his decline of like anti-socialism. Like growing up as a super young age, I remember him being super funny and charismatic and just like this great, like he was my dad. And then I don't know, just as life got harder, I don't think my parents were really prepared to be parents. They just like, my mom just got pregnant and they were like, okay, we have 3 kids now. And oh, financial responsibility. Oh, like social inclusion. And my dad is probably autistic. It kind of runs in my family. But he never really wanted to look into that for himself. So like it was really strange seeing him struggle socially, but then like just like completely remove himself from all the situations that he was like being hurt by. So he just became reclusive and like be on the computer all the time playing video games and stuff. So like that was really starting to happen that year too. So just like a very strange year where I was kind of like, oh, kind of growing up, life was like, this is your life. I was like, okay. And then we moved after a year back to the States.
And what year was that, or what?
That was, I think I was like 7 through 8 years old. So 2008 or 9, probably.
And where did you move to in the States?
Yeah. We moved from Saitama after a year to Coalinga, California, which is a tiny Central Valley town. Just like so in the buttfuck of nowhere, just like dry ass hills and cows and like oil rigs. That was also formative but fun for me, at least. I moved after being in Japan for a year. I was finally like getting accustomed to the language. I was finally like aware of what we were learning in class, and I was actually finally able to like read a textbook in Japanese, and then moved back to America again. And it was like the last quarter of 3rd grade, because like the school years are kind of different, because like in Japan the school year starts in spring, but in America it starts like in the fall. So there's that like slight, like because of my age, even though I was supposed to if I had stayed in Japan, I would have finished 2nd grade and started 3rd grade, but then because of the timing that we moved, I was in like the last semester of 3rd grade in America. So here I was again, like I had forgotten English. I'm like all behind my peers because I can't even like read at an English level correctly. So like back in this like, oh, I don't know what's going on, what are people saying, like just that weird cognitive thing. But I adapted.
You had no other choice.
Yeah, just like, oh, I'm here.
Did you have like a sense at that point of feeling kind of like on your own in a way?
I think it was just so inherent that I never really realized the impact of it. Like it's just like ingrained in my being. Just like this independence kind of.
Just unconsciously, it's like, oh, this is what I do. I fend for myself, or I got to be the person to take care of it.
Or just adapting to whatever, like not even realizing, oh, like this is a weird situation to be in. It's like, no, this is just where I am. Like not even, because like as a kid, you don't really realize the impact of like how crazy these situations are. It's just like, okay, that happened. What's for dinner? There's nothing in the fridge. Okay, I'll eat sugar.
I mean, I can't personally relate to that like chain of chain of actions in that quite the same way, but like I suppose in some other way I can kind of go back into like kid logic of just like, okay, on to the next thing, or like on to the next kind of practical thing that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, and I think because of just like the absurdity of things that I was going through without the context of like an adult mind, I think it made me like super optimistic just about anything. Like, cause like no matter where I moved, I always made friends, and I always like could find, like, even though I experienced like bullying and like stuff like that, like moving back to Kalinga, like I was still super optimistic and like extroverted and like always hanging out with people after school and stuff.
I remember you were talking about like being extroverted as a kid in our like first recording.
Yeah. So I still had that like inherent just like optimism.
And how long were you in Kalinga for?
For 4 years. We moved back to Japan in 2011. Wait, the timeline isn't. Yeah. Well, yeah, the years kind of. I think maybe 3 years then, because I was there 4th grade and 5th grade. Okay, maybe only 2 years. I don't think I was there for 6th grade. Yeah.
What prompted going back to Japan?
It was always my parents like, oh, I lost my job, I can go back to Japan and teach English. Or like, oh, I lost a job, let's go back to America because I can be a substitute teacher. It was always just like lack of job stability.
Okay, so they were just like, it was always based around jobs and job hunting, and just like, oh, if things aren't working here, we can just move to another country.
Yes, exactly. And also credit card debt too. Like my dad was like, oh, financial responsibility, credit card debt is a real thing. Well, if we move back to Japan, I don't have to like pay it for a certain amount of
That's intense.
Yeah.
So you went back to Japan for like 6th grade. And then
stayed there until I graduated high school, and then that's when I was like, okay, goodbye everyone, I'm going back to America to like begin my own life.
Can you say more about that, like that sense of like just thinking about that choice and how it kind of like aligned with the end of high school? Had you been thinking about that like leading up to it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that final move to Japan was like what really broke me, kind of, because up till then I had like this unlimited, boundless optimism and extroversion, but 2011, I'm pretty sure that was the year we moved, and then I think puberty too was just like so hard, like leaving this like innocent, naive childhood and then developing this like sense of like who you are and trying to develop that in like a home where like your parents don't give a shit about you and like these kids are bullying you at school, and like that was just really hard. So I think that, and just like finally kind of waking up to the reality of how fucked up my family situation was like, okay, like, well, I can't be here forever, because the longer I stay, the more it's just gonna like fuck me up too. So I think the goal was always to leave my home as soon as I was 18. The deepest level, it makes people have to build mechanisms to protect themselves out of like fear, and that kind of stifles a person to like be their authentic self. Kind of like going back to my whole relationship with communication, like that was how it showed up for me, but like everyone has different ways in how it shows up in them.
I feel like you're about to say something else, but
no.
Okay. I immediately think of like, does everyone talk about like the negative impact of their like childhood? To what extent are people like, is that just sort of a common conversation?
Definitely not. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of like how kind of debilitating it is. Like everyone, it's just kind of like normal to like have not so great, like have super rigid. It's just kind of normalized, like not having. I don't know. I feel like I have like an idea of what it means to like have a good, healthy connection with a person, and a lot of families don't have that. And so we kind of like carry that out into our personal lives and just like have like weird. I'm like, you're okay with that? Like, that's, I don't know, like boundaries and healthy communication and I don't know.
Is that
exchanges of energy?
Is that something that like with all of your close friends you've like had conversations about, like not necessarily like, let's like exchange traumas, but you know, like covering it for the sake of like that it kind of establishes like a safe ground, or like, you know, if you can share that with them, then it's like, oh yeah, you can like.
I think I'm always talking about it just because I'm like super passionate about it. It's not like let's do it together. It's just kind of like, this is me, this is what I think about all the time, and then I naturally spend more time with people who already have that like mutual understanding, like I totally understand what you mean, and then we both kind of like share that level of understanding to some degree.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, the world's kind of weird sometimes.
Honestly,
what my
like,
family situation was.
Pick your flavor of like how to.
Was like, okay, like, well, I can't be here forever, because the longer I stay, the more it's just gonna like fuck me up too. So I think the goal was always to leave my home as soon as I was 18. And also like the financial aspect of it too. Like I can't really afford college. Like there's no money for me to go anywhere. So I have to like either get scholarships or just like find a way. And so I was considering, there's no military in Japan, but there is like a national protective service thing that is kind of like the military. Like Japan swore off war after World War II because of just like the atrocities that happened and the atrocities that they themselves committed to. But so because that college would be free to like go there to like become a part of this like Japanese naval force. I don't know what the translation would be in English. So
do you want to say it in Japanese if you?
Boe Daigaku. Boe, yeah. So like, yeah, I was like pretty determined, but then I think I just like lost interest in the idea. Cause like I wasn't passionate about it. I just wanted to like be self-sufficient. And I would have to like be in that school, and it was like a boarding school, and I'd have to like wake up at 5 a.m. to like do push-ups and stuff, and it was that kind of like, yeah, it's free, but at what cost?
And why not just go to like Tokyo?
Well, financially, I just couldn't see myself doing that, like supporting myself while going through college, because like I need my own apartment and I need like all these things. So I think, I don't know how the plan really arose, but I was like, oh, I should just go back to America. And my grandma had some money saved up for me, like $2,000 maybe. So I used that to like go to Tokyo and renew my passport, and then buy my own ticket to America, and then pay for my extra like belongings, because you can only carry so many things onto the plane. So I like shoved all my stuff in cardboard boxes, and then I like had a layover flight and like landed in Oregon, and I looked at my boxes. I was like, oh my gosh, they're falling apart. And like I asked one of like people at the airport, like, do you have like duct tape? Like my stuff's coming out of my boxes. I was like, oh yeah, and, like taped up my boxes, and then landed in Fresno. Yeah, I think the plan was like to live in California for like a year or so until I could qualify to become like a California resident, to get to go to community college at like the reduced rate, because like if you hadn't lived in California for like a year, it'll be more expensive.
And that was the time in Fresno, working in restaurants, saving money, and tattooing up a storm.
Yeah.
What's your grandmother's name?
Suzanne Thorson. Sue.
And she sounds like she had like a positive presence in your life. Is that the case, or am I putting not?
Yes and no. As a child, she was super loving, super supportive. I owe a lot of like my creative love for like art to her, because she really was like I just remember her helping us like do art projects. Like we'd melt, like we had this like weird thing where we could like make art with melted crayons and stuff, or like we'd go outside and pick flower petals and like make dresses for dolls and stuff. But then like growing up was just hard for me, because I saw just like how interconnected, like a person can love you the best that they can, but it's still like not good. Like it's still kind of can be harmful. Like the whole, like the fact that she raised my dad, and I could see how that was like affecting things, and like how she was dealing with my own relationship with my parents. Like she was, I didn't feel like I could be myself, or like I felt, I don't know, the older I grew up, the more I felt like fearful around her. Without like, she didn't do it with malice or anything. It was just like, yeah, different levels of awareness, I guess.
Was she, I mean, I'm trying to get a kind of a picture of like if there were like stable, positive people growing up, and mostly like I have not heard like that there have been them. I'm trying to get a sense of like who were the people, if there were any like that were like, oh, these people are trustworthy, or like these people are like stable stable enough.
Probably each set of my grandparents, like the grandparents in Fresno, my American grandparents, because they had a job, and or not a job, but they had like a house and they had food. So to me, that was stability. And then in Japan, my Japanese grandparents, even though they had their own set of just like crazy shit going on, like they still had a house, and they always had food. So in that sense, like that was the most stable in my head.
So then you moved out here, spending time with the grandparents.
But then I left after 2 months. As soon as I could afford my apartment, I was like, I need my own space. Like, I can't live under your roof anymore.
And that was the start of living independent Lili.
Mm-hmm. Best years of my life.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah. Very formative. Or just like, I finally had space to process everything. Like, being in my own company and no one to worry about or cater to or defend myself from. I've like, just being in my own space was just so what I needed.
Did you feel, I'm thinking about myself and my experiences of like when I've had my own space, that I felt like more relaxed, or having the feeling of like, I think I actually might be able to collect my thoughts a little bit right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What was that, if you had an experience like that, what was that like for you, like kind of letting things settle a bit, or like getting distance, or?
Yeah. It just felt peaceful, and like I could let my body just like rest. And like when I was a little kid, I always had this like fantasy of like, I wish I could freeze time and I could just like go in my own room and just like do whatever I wanted and not have to worry about going to school the next morning, or like doing this thing tomorrow. Like I wish I could just freeze time. And I feel like that I got my wish, like as an adult being in an apartment. Like yeah, I still went to work during the day, but when I was home, like that was just my time, and like I didn't have to cater to anyone.
What would you do with your free time, with your frozen time?
My frozen time, a lot of listening to music, a lot of smoking weed. I don't do that anymore because it makes me anxious. Yeah, I never owned a TV, so like not a lot of watching things. Making art Yeah. Especially during the pandemic, like I really was like focusing on making art. Yeah. Thrifting. I love thrifting. I still love thrifting.
What kind of art were you making?
Like a lot of Photoshop stuff. Like I would take pictures and then like make like weird self-portrait digital collage things. Yeah.
Do you think in the show notes we can link to like
Yeah.
some of them?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah?
That was like my embarrassing era where I had like a mushroom bowl cut. It was so bad, and I still had like baby fat on my face, and it was just like, but it was, yeah. If I didn't, I don't know, I look at my art back then and I'm like, whoa, there's some cool things. Even though, I don't know, sometimes I cringe when I look at it, but sometimes I'm like, whoa, that's some cool stuff that I made.
Like, not necessarily, is it like anything particular, or is it just like seeing the arrangement of the collage and you're just like, oh, that's
Yeah, like the colors I used, and yeah.
It's cool. I'm also thinking about how you look in the mirror and how is it once per day-ish, like kind of around like grooming time that you look in the mirror, or what's your relationship with the mirror like?
I used to look in the mirror a lot, and I think that is kind of symbolic now that I'm thinking about it, of just like me wanting to see myself, like who is, like, how do I perceive myself? Like, how should I? Like, I don't know how to perceive myself, so I'm like looking in the mirror for answers. Like, who is that? Like, what? I can't wrap my mind around it. And now it's more like, how do I want to be perceived? Like, oh, how should I do my makeup? Or like, oh, my skin's a little like reddish, maybe I should put foundation on. Or like, oh, I have some baby hairs, let me just like fix that up a bit. Or like, just stuff. And then I don't spend too much time. I used to take a lot of like pictures of myself too, like just selfies and like self-portraits, I guess. I don't find myself doing that as often as I did when I was like younger and I was more like lost, I guess. Like just had an obsession of just like, I don't know who I am.
But then that kind of faded away into like just
into more
practicality.
Or like more intentionally like putting it out there who I want to be or like who I am.
I'm also thinking about how you were talking about like looking in the mirror when you were growing up, and now I'm like connecting that to this like self-portrait thing.
Definitely. Just like trying to understand who I even am.
Yeah, and I mean it, like I'm trying to think about it in like the sense of like the abstract of like everyone goes through this, but then like kind of hearing the particulars of your story and like trying to think about how it might be. Like,
I feel like I needed to do it. Like, it was, a lot of it was from a sense of like desperation, or just like I don't know, I feel like my experience gives me a level of like, I don't know, people who don't go through stuff like this don't really have a sense of urgency, which is nice. Like, that's amazing. But I feel like my experience is, I feel like I need to like have a base level of just like strong intention, or just like I need to know exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and to know that it matters, so I'm not like wasting my time like doing something that is like so silly and doesn't really do anything.
Can you just riff on that a little bit more?
I need to know that what I'm doing is aligned with who I want to be and the life I want to create. Yeah. Even if it's just like laying in bed because I need to rest, like that's something I'm doing for myself because I know that I need to rest.
But I'm curious about lots of things, but like the urgency.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that too?
Yeah, because like we all have only one life, so I want to like make something of it, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Just like that primal survival urgency of just like, I'm not just gonna like float around and act like nothing's like, I mean, it, like, yeah, nothing's serious and life's fun and like it's like a game, and I love, yeah, definitely that, but also like I'm here to learn and grow and evolve too, like on a soul level.
I don't want to use the word like plan for your life, but when you think about like things that you would like to be or become in the future, what kind of things like come to mind for you?
I want a homestead property with like sustainable, like I want gardens, and like I want to reuse my gray water to like water my plants and have this like beautiful home with lots of natural sunlight and like a creek running through my property and like yeah.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. And quails. I love quails.
Oh, quails. Okay. How'd they get into the picture?
California.
Okay. I don't know enough about California to know that quails are an integral part of our world here.
Yeah. I think if you go more in like Northern California and you're like more in like nature, like you'll see quails, and it's like I love them. They're so like they're special. They have the little thing on their head.
Their finder, their antenna.